The backstage hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint and warm cables, a place where dreams lined up shoulder to shoulder, each waiting for its turn to breathe. The Filipino boy stood there quietly, his small fingers wrapped tightly around the microphone as if it were the only solid thing in a world that suddenly felt too big. The noise of the audience leaked through the thick curtains, laughter, chatter, the low hum of anticipation, but to him it sounded distant, like waves crashing far away. He took a slow breath, the kind his mother had taught him whenever fear tried to steal his courage. In his mind, he repeated the same words she whispered that morning before he left, "Sing from your heart. Don't be afraid." A stage assistant crouched beside him and gently adjusted the cable at his feet. "You're next," she said softly, offering an encouraging smile. He nodded, though his throat felt tight. He glanced down at his shoes, simple, slightly worn sneakers that had walked the dusty roads of his hometown, shoes that had never imagined standing on a stage like this. Just weeks ago, he had been singing in a small room with peeling paint, his voice echoing off concrete walls while neighbors paused outside to listen. Now, those same walls existed only in memory, replaced by blinding lights and a global audience. The curtain began to part, revealing a glimpse of the America's Got Talent stage. The lights were brighter than he expected, washing everything in gold and white. His heart pounded so loudly he wondered if the judges could hear it. When his name was announced, he stepped forward, each footfall careful, almost hesitant, as though the floor itself might disappear. The applause greeted him politely, not wild, not dismissive, just curious. To many in the audience, he was another hopeful contestant, another story waiting to be tested. From the judges' table, Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He watched the boy with a familiar expression, measured, skeptical, unreadable. He had seen thousands like him, children with big dreams and fragile confidence. Talent was rare, hope was common. The boy felt Simon's gaze like a weight, but he kept his eyes forward, focusing instead on the glowing AGT logo behind the judges, reminding himself why he was there. "Hello," one of the judges said warmly. "What's your name?" The boy swallowed and leaned closer to the microphone. "My name is Miguel," he replied, his accent gentle, his voice barely louder than the room itself. "And where are you from, Miguel?" another judge asked. "I'm from the Philippines," he said, a small smile breaking through his nerves. "A small town near the ocean." A murmur rippled through the audience. The judge smiled. "That's a long way to come." Miguel nodded. "Yes, ma'am, it is." Simon leaned forward slightly. "How old are you, Miguel?" "I'm 14, sir." "What made you come all this way?" Simon asked, his tone direct but not unkind. Miguel hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words in a language that still felt borrowed. "I sing because it helps my family," he said finally. "And because it makes me feel brave." The simplicity of his answer drew a few soft, sounds from the crowd. Simon raised an eyebrow, studying him more closely now. "Okay," he said. "And what will you be singing for us today?" Miguel glanced briefly toward the wings of the stage, as if he could see his mother standing there, hands clasped, eyes closed in prayer. "I will sing a song that means everything to me," he said. "It's about hope." The judges nodded. The audience applauded lightly again. Miguel took his position at the center of the stage. The lights shifted, dimming just enough to make the vast theater feel slightly smaller, more intimate. A single spotlight settled on him, warm and steady. He adjusted his grip on the microphone, his knuckles white. In that moment, doubt crept in. His mind flashed with images of his hometown, the narrow streets, the sound of roosters at dawn, the evenings when electricity went out and he sang by candlelight. He remembered the first time he realized his voice was different, the way people stopped talking when he sang, the way his father had smiled with quiet pride. He remembered the sacrifices, borrowed money, long flights, the fear of failing not just himself but everyone who believed in him. The music cue had not yet started. Silence stretched, heavy and unforgiving. Somewhere in the audience, someone coughed. Miguel felt his chest tighten. For a split second, he considered running, turning around, disappearing behind the curtain where he would be safe from judgment. But then he felt something shift inside him. Fear was still there, but so was something stronger. He lifted his chin slightly and closed his eyes. He imagined the ocean near his home, the steady rhythm of waves reminding him that even the smallest voice could travel far if it was true. His breathing slowed. The stage no longer felt like an enemy, it felt like a test. From the judge's table, Simon noticed the change. The boy's posture straightened, his expression settling into calm focus. Simon uncrossed his arms, curiosity replacing skepticism. He had learned over the years to recognize this moment, the quiet before something unexpected. The opening note of the music was seconds away. Miguel opened his eyes, looking straight ahead now, not at the judges, not at the crowd, but somewhere beyond them, toward a future he had only dared to imagine. The noise of the world faded. There was only the stage, the light, and the truth he was about to release. The first note left Miguel's lips so softly that it almost seemed fragile, like it might dissolve before reaching the back of the theater. It floated into the silence with a gentle tremble, pure and clear, carrying a tenderness that immediately demanded attention. The audience leaned in without realizing it, their casual curiosity shifting into focus. This was not the loud, showy opening many had expected. It was intimate, controlled, and deeply sincere. Miguel stood perfectly still, his small frame illuminated by the spotlight. His eyes were half closed, lashes resting against his cheeks as if he were singing not to the thousands before him, but to someone far away. The microphone barely touched his lips, yet his voice carried effortlessly, filling the massive space with a warmth that felt almost personal. Each word was shaped carefully, pronounced with respect, as though the song itself were something sacred. At the judge's table, Simon Cowell's posture changed almost immediately. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the desk, eyes fixed on the boy. The skepticism that had hovered moments earlier began to crack. This was not the sound of a nervous teenager guessing his way through a melody. This was control. This was instinct. Simon had heard voices trained by the best coaches in the world that carried less honesty than this single, unguarded tone. As the melody unfolded, Miguel's confidence grew. His shoulders relaxed. His breathing steadied. The initial tremble in his voice faded, replaced by a smooth, resonant sound that seemed far too large to belong to someone so young. The audience remained silent, not out of politeness, but because something in the boy's voice commanded it. People who had been shifting in their seats moments earlier now sat frozen, afraid that even the smallest movement might break the spell. The song began to build, layer by layer. Miguel's voice climbed higher, not forced, not strained, but lifted as if carried by an unseen current. When he reached the first sustained note, a quiet gasp rippled through the theater. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. Somewhere farther back, someone whispered, "Oh my God," though the words barely made a sound. Miguel opened his eyes then, and in them was a depth that surprised everyone. They were not the eyes of a boy performing for approval, they were the eyes of someone telling a story he had lived. Each lyric landed with weight, colored by emotion that could not be taught. It spoke of longing, of distance, of hope held together by faith and song. Even those who didn't fully understand the words felt the meaning settle into their chests. One of the judges slowly shook her head, a smile forming as disbelief turned into admiration. Another leaned toward her microphone, then stopped herself, realizing that any interruption, even praise, would be an intrusion. This was a moment to be witnessed, not broken. Simon's expression had transformed completely now. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes narrowed in concentration, not judgment. He watched Miguel closely, waiting for the moment when young singers often faltered, the tricky transition, the risky note, the place where nerves betrayed talent. It never came. Miguel moved through the song with an instinctive understanding of its dynamics, pulling back when softness was needed, then releasing power with breathtaking precision. As the chorus arrived, Miguel's voice expanded, rich and full, ringing through the hall like a bell. It was powerful, but never aggressive. It carried pain without sounding broken, strength without arrogance. The sound seemed to wrap around the audience, binding strangers together in shared astonishment. People exchanged glances as if to confirm that what they were hearing was real. A man in the balcony felt tears gather unexpectedly. He hadn't planned on feeling anything tonight. He had come for entertainment, for spectacle. Yet here he was, blinking hard, his chest tight, moved by a boy he had never met singing a song he would never forget. All around him, similar reactions unfolded quietly, hands clutching armrests, lips pressed together, hearts opened without permission. Miguel reached the bridge of the song, the most vulnerable section. The music softened, leaving his voice almost alone. For a moment, it wavered, not from fear, but from emotion. That slight imperfection made it even more real. He closed his eyes again, and when he sang the next line, it carried a raw honesty that sent a visible shiver through the room. Simon inhaled sharply. This was the moment he lived for as a judge, the rare instant when talent transcended expectation and became something else entirely. He had seen careers born on this stage, but this felt different. This felt inevitable. The final chorus soared. Miguel hit a high note so clean and so perfectly placed that the audience reacted before he even finished it. A wave of sound rose from the crowd, gasps, murmurs, the beginning of applause that quickly quieted as people realized the song was not yet over. They wanted to hear every last second. As the music swelled, Miguel stood taller, his voice now fearless. The boy who had walked onto the stage moments earlier was gone. In his place stood an artist, fully present, fully alive in the moment. The spotlight seemed to glow brighter, as if responding to him. The final note rang out, long and unwavering, hanging in the air like a promise. Miguel held it with stunning control, then released it gently, allowing the silence that followed to speak for itself. For a heartbeat, just one, the entire theater was perfectly still.